What's up, everybody? The New York Times had a breaking story that the Ted Alexandro Show covered 2 months ago. Oh, man. Have you been talking to Saturday Night Live? Let's get into it.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the Ted Alexandro Show. I am your host, Ted Alexandro, coming to you from an undisclosed location in the Northeast of these United States of America. How are you, friends? Are you well? Are you vaccinated? People seem to be doing that more and more. My parents got the vaccination. Friends, relatives have. People that are, I guess, in the first high-risk group, or the people that are first allowed to get it. My wife and I think, we're a comedian and psychic medium. I don't know where those fall on the list of like urgency to get vaccinated, but I think we probably come right after like snow cone salesperson, somewhere in there. So, not saying in any way that I don't think snow cone salespeople should not be vaccinated. I'm just saying I'm making it clear where comedians and psychic mediums fall on the chart. And who knows even how this is all happening, right? How is it all happening? How is it being arrived at? Certainly, senior citizens, people in that pool should be first. And essential workers. But aren't we all essential? Healthcare workers, yes. Vaccinate them twice. Let's get people well. Let's get them protected. Because things are moving along, right? I was watching the Knicks highlights the other day, and apparently people are attending the games. I don't know what the hell's going on. I just find these things out because they come across my timeline. And I see one of the Knicks players, Julius Randle, taking the microphone, as they do from time to time, and addressing the fans before the game. And I felt bad for him for a number of reasons. One, he's not a public speaker. This guy is not, some athletes gravitate towards that sort of thing. But Julius Randle, he's their best player. He's their all-star. But he's not, you can tell he doesn't enjoy being put into the spotlight. And he's there to welcome the fans back, to the pandemic. Like, hey, let's celebrate we're declaring the pandemic over. And it just all felt so weird. I was shocked because I didn't know, I knew like people could attend the Super Bowl. I thought that was bizarre. Everything that's gone on, let me be clear, everything that's gone on for the past year now, I've thought was bizarre and handled wrong. And that's a safe position to take, because that's usually the case, that mistakes are going to be made, and they have been right from the outset up until this moment. So I saw Julius Randle, the Knicks all-star forward, addressing the crowd, welcoming them back. And I just thought, this video is not going to age well. It's going to be another problem where there will be a whatever wave we're up to. Third, fourth, fifth. Like, why? How do you think people get to Madison Square Garden? They show up in a pod and they're just dropped into their seat? No, they take public transportation. They take, they walk on busy streets. They take Ubers, cabs. It's just, there's no need for people to be watching, especially the Knicks. Let's be clear. I know they're better this year, but don't be fooled. We've been here before. But more importantly, I'm talking about the absurdity of fans attending games. It doesn't have to be this way. Yes, let them play. I like to see the videos. I like to see the clips on YouTube and Twitter. You know, if it gives me 5 minutes of entertainment and distraction, great. But people do not physically have to be there, is my point. And Julius Randle does not have to welcome them back. The whole thing is wrong. So this is where we are now. No doubt this phase of things is wrong and things are being handled improperly. And how do I know that? Because I pay attention. It's not that hard to do, folks. And most of us, I think, do to one degree or another. And to that point, I want to bring up, I'm not one to toot my own horn, though I was a member of the junior high school 109 jazz ensemble back in the early 80s. I was the first trombone. But any tooting that I did was on behalf of the whole, which is as it should be. But the Ted Alexandro Show broke a story 2 months ago that the New York Times is just now getting to. I found that fascinating. Just yesterday on my Twitter timeline, I saw a New York Times reporter talking about breaking news. Breaking news about New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. And the breaking news was that a former aide to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, Lindsey Boylan, details sexual harassment claims. This is Jesse McKinley is this New York Times reporter. And this is 23 hours ago on his timeline. Breaking news. Lindsey Boylan details sexual harassment claims, including an unwanted kiss in his New York office. And the story comes out. Look, the Ted Alexandro Show broke this story 2 months ago. Episode 38. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has been accused of sexual harassment by Lindsey Boylan, a former staffer and current candidate for Manhattan Borough President. Lindsey Boylan tweeted, "Yes, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed me for years. Many saw it and watched. I could never anticipate what to expect. Would I be grilled on my work, which was very good, or harassed about my looks? Or would it be both in the same conversation? This was the way for years." We talked about Lindsey Boylan's claims of sexual harassment against Governor Cuomo. Emmy Award winning, I should say. This man is highly decorated. And I talked about the charade, the absurdity of the whole thing. Like, this guy kind of capitalized to some extent on the pandemic by doing his daily television show and his folksy charm, and people, as they do, fell for it. They took to it. Maybe for the first episode or so, I thought like, oh, this is fun. But after a while, you can see when ego and personal agenda, especially of a politician, take over, and he's just basically doing a show that he hopes to submit to the Emmys. So it morphed into that. It morphed into the Andrew Cuomo hour, and it was as much about him as it was about disseminating information making people aware of what was going on with the pandemic. So a couple of months ago, former aide to Cuomo, Lindsey Boylan, put out, she tweeted about it. I guess she filed sexual harassment charges against him. And the Ted Alexandro Show was on it because those are important stories, But by the media, they're treated as unimportant, as things to be ignored. And I think the patriarchy, let's face it, is at the core of that. The patriarchy, male supremacy, call it what it is at the center of that. Preserving power, male supremacy, these men, whether it is Andrew Cuomo, Joe Biden, Donald Trump. These are people that are in the highest offices in the world in some cases. Certainly in our country or in the state of New York, in Andrew Cuomo's case. Men who have abused women in various ways. So I thought that was a story worth covering. I thought that was something worth amplifying. And so I did on the Ted Alexandro Show, episode 38. Yesterday, the New York Times suddenly thought, hey, maybe this is worth talking about. Let's make this breaking news. Have you been, are you studying SNL's playbook? Folks, it ain't easy being 10 minutes early on everything. Except actually physically showing up for appointments, let me be clear. But, SNL took the Zillow bit. God bless. Waiting on my million. And now I guess maybe I'll have to sue the New York Times for saying that they broke the story. When in fact, the Ted Alexandro Show did. But the important thing, of course, is that Lindsey Boylan filed very credible claims of harassment, sexual harassment. I guess he asked her to play strip poker on a flight one time, grabbing and touching her, groping her, touching her back, her arms, breaching the physical space protocols that most people are aware of and abide by. So you ask yourself, why? Why New York Times? Clearly you watched the Ted Alexandro Show, episode 38, a couple of months ago. Why did you hold this in abeyance until today, yesterday? And I think it's clear because now it's open season on Cuomo because the other scandals that have come to the fore. Another of his aides, Melissa DeRosa, admitted a week or two ago that the Cuomo administration hid nursing home data pertinent to the pandemic so that the federal government would not find out. The state declined to provide full data to, I guess, White House legislators on the number of nursing home residents who had died of COVID-19 after the Justice Department announced a probe into the state's handling of the pandemic. What could be wrong with the state's handling of the pandemic? You're talking about an Emmy award winner. How dare you question a man with an Emmy on his mantle? Does it not just illustrate the absurdity of it all? And it's elevating the individual. It's the problem with our whole society of celebrity culture, elevating the individual stories, the individual successes, rather than the whole. Who cares about Andrew Cuomo and his Emmy award-winning show? How about a government that efficiently takes care of its citizens. And we don't need a television show from the governor. You know, we don't need an Emmy Award. You know, but a broken system can do nothing but elevate individuals and give them awards. That's what it's designed to do. So as people die, is it 500,000 now? And this guy who was celebrated from the outset for his handling and his press conferences, award-winning, in fact, was abusing women and covering up information. And this guy's right for one of the good guys, and that's always the problem with these black hat, white hat scenarios of Trump is the evil one, which he is, but Cuomo, Biden, they're the white hats, they're the good guys, they're doing right by us. Cuomo is sexually harassing his employees, women that are in his employ. He's touching, proposing strip poker with, terrorizing, creating a hellacious work environment for women. And if that's not bad enough, if you don't care about that kind of thing, why would you? His office is also declining to provide full data to legislators. He's covering up the nursing home deaths related to COVID. But other than that, he's a great guy. Personally, he's a sexual abuser, harasser in the workplace. He terrorizes the women that work for him. And he lies about a pandemic and the data with regards to the people dying in his state. But other than that, he's an Emmy Award winner. Let's circle back to what matters. He's an engaging personality on camera. He speaks plainly, which we always love, right? We love a guy who speaks plainly. Let's elevate the individual always. He'll get a book deal, maybe a cologne. Tell me you wouldn't splash a little behind each ear. The Cuomo cologne. What would it be called? Emmy? But it would smell of corruption, patriarchy, and harassment. Of that I can assure you. So, maybe I am tooting my own horn a bit. We here at the Ted Alexandro Show work hard to bring you the news first and fast. The stories that matter and will matter to the New York Times months later. But it is male supremacy. It is the patriarchy. The Me Too movement, right? It's laying bare just the endemic nature of men abusing power, and it's no impediment to them getting to the highest heights in their career. It is no impediment to them going as far as they want. And these women are discarded. They're viewed as unimportant. They're to be used and enjoyed in some manner. They're just kind of fun to have around. They're not looked at as peers. They're not even looked at as human beings. They're not respected for what they bring to the workplace. They're to be enjoyed, belittled, abused, and discarded. And that's the way Andrew Cuomo looked at Lindsey Boylan and other women, as we discussed. Because in her claims, she said she knows for a fact that she is not the only one, as is often the case, right? But that comes at a price to speak out against these types, because these types, as we know, they will crush you. Trump is known for, he'll double down, right? They'll sue you. They'll go after you. Cuomo is no different. There was I think a politician in New York. I don't know. I think Kim is his last name. I forget. I don't know if he's from Flushing or some sort of maybe. I don't know if he's a councilman. Forgive me. I don't know the exact details, but I know that he spoke out on the Cuomo administration's covering up this data and lying about it. And Cuomo came out guns blazing against Kim, this guy. So these types, they will turn the tables on you and bring the full brunt of their power against you and stop at nothing to squash any opponents or anyone that would bring to light their misdeeds. So fascinating to see. No surprises if you're paying attention. These are the things that happen with powerful men. And I always believe the allegations. Especially when there's more than one. I believe one, but when there's more than one, it's a slam dunk. So this is where we're at. The Ted Alexandro Show will not be receiving an Emmy, nor do we want one. We don't want to be part of that party. Right? We take the Groucho Marx approach. No desire to be a part of any club that would have me. But it's you, the people. That is truly who we serve. Thank you to all of you who have hit that subscribe button, rang the notifications bell. Do that so you know when we are posting content. And please like this video down below and leave us a comment. Tell us what's on your mind. And if you wish to support the Ted Alexandro Show and the work we are doing here, and I implore you to do so if you are able, because this is how I make my living now, how I support my family. And it does take work to put together our shows, the videos, and the bonus content that we post on Patreon. So if you are able to do so, please consider becoming a patron. Lots of bonus content there. Patreon.com/Ted Alexandro. Episode 11 of the Ted Alexandro Comedy Academy has been posted. It's called Let's Go to the Videotape, where I talk about the importance of recording your sets, analyzing them, looking for strengths and weaknesses, things that you're doing well, things that you need to improve upon. And in the episode, bit of a time travel, I look back at one of my sets at the comic strip in 1994, 95. So we're talking 27 years ago. So that was fun to look back at. And there were plenty of weaknesses to point out and plenty of strengths as well. But it was fun for present-day Ted, Professor Alexandro, to look back at neophyte, young Teddy, flailing about the stage, figuring it all out. So please check out all of the bonus content at patreon.com/Ted Alexandro. All right, my friends, it is time to welcome our guest for today's show. This is a man I have tremendous respect for. He is someone that I met in a very unique way, essentially in a courtroom. My court case with my involvement with Occupy Wall Street, he was the lead attorney. And not only did we meet, but he wound up meeting his wife through that court case, through me. So, hey, am I a matchmaker? Perhaps. But this is a man, as I said, who I respect tremendously, does just beautiful work for the people, for the movements, for all the right things. He is a New York City-based lawyer, concentrating mostly on police misconduct. What do you mean? He must hardly work. civil rights, criminal defense, and freedom of information law. He is the former president of the New York chapter of the National Lawyers Guild. Let's welcome to the show, Mr. Gideon Oliver. Gideon, welcome to the show. I appreciate you making the time. I know you're a very busy man, both in terms of your work and your life as husband and father of two little human beings. So thank you for making the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you. You look great. Mazel tov.
Thank you. Yeah, we're catching up to you guys. As I said earlier, before we came on, I'm watching closely both you and Molly's social media posts about parenting. I'm accruing do's and don'ts, mostly do's, of course.
I'm trying.
No, it's great. It's inspiring to watch you guys. I wanted to first, of course, you and I have history together that we will delve into. The way that we met is funny, and in fact, the way that led to your nuptials is also very fascinating. So we will. Yes, we'll circle back to that. But I wanted to talk to you about the case that you're involved with regarding George Floyd and the NYPD and sort of this civil rights case that's being brought against the NYPD.
Sure. So I'm very proud to be co-counsel with Elena Cohen, Remy Green, Wiley Stecklow, and a bunch of lawyers from Beldock, Levine, and Hoffman in a putative class action that we filed in late January in the federal court in the Southern District of New York against the city, the mayor, the police department, and various police officials over the NYPD's and the city's response to anti-police brutality protests in the wake of the police killing of George Floyd over the summer. The case that I'm co-counsel on is So versus the city of New York. It's a putative class action, which means that we're going to ask the court to let us proceed on behalf of different groups or classes of people who were subjected to different kinds of misconduct by the police. It's one of 5 cases that are pending in this federal court and before the chief judge of the court. And on Monday, we were in front of the chief judge, and she set what's called a rocket docket, which basically means the cases are going to move as quickly as the court can move them.
Now, is that when you hear rocket docket, is that a good thing or a bad thing, or it just remains to be seen?
It's fast, Ted. So that's all I know, and that's all I can say.
Right.
It's very fast. And there were proposals. Everybody who's involved from the city side and from each of the plaintiff's lawyer side submitted to the court sort of our different ideas about what might happen next in the case. And this was a meeting where the judge basically said, I've read everything that you submitted and here's the plan. And, the plan is to be, basically done by the end of the year with discovery and, in the RNC, the cases that we brought after the 2004 Republican National Convention, it took 9 years or something to resolve those cases. And
that was when they had like the notorious freedom pens where they had the protesters like blocks away, and I remember attending that march. But yeah, that was kind of the birth of those freedom pens, right, or whatever they called them.
Yeah, right. Freedom pens, various kinds of frozen zones. You started hearing about frozen zones around the RNC, and also, a real expansion of the kinds of tactics that we now talk about as kettling, different forms of encirclement. So many of the same sort of claims that we're raising in these lawsuits now are very similar to claims that we've been raising over and over again over the years, whether you call it kettling or trapping or encirclement, or, whether it's this particular unit that's doing it or that particular unit that's doing it. some similar militarized police tactics, et cetera.
So how does it move from people suffering some sort of injustice at the hands of the police to, and we can take this out to the broader sense even of, because when I was involved in various protests over the years, there were times when I literally, took a baton to the back repeatedly as I was obeying orders, to move along or to go to a certain side of the street. So, not to say that, I was brutalized the way many other people are, but how does it become a class action suit where people, get involved? Does that have to just be started by one or another individual that organizes? Like, how do people take that step? Because this so often goes on, is what I'm saying. Like, protesters are routinely brutalized, officers routinely abuse their power. So how does it get to that level where like a case of this scope is formed?
A great question, maybe series of questions. Let me start with sort of the class action. A class action is just a particular way of litigating or, trying to bring a case and trying to attack a problem. Sometimes, there are some of the 5 cases that I mentioned are not class actions. They're one of them that's being pursued by the New York Civil Liberties Union and the Legal Aid Society. It is being brought on behalf of 11 people, but challenges many of the same policies and practices that, we're challenging and that the Attorney General is challenging. In our case, we're seeking money damages as well as injunctive relief or, policy change, equitable relief. The Attorney General's lawsuit is not looking for money damages. They're just looking for policy change. There are a lot of different ways that lawyers can litigate these kinds of cases. Maybe that's a little bit of a mushy answer, but sort of how do you get here? Well, first people complain. They talk to, request legal advice, seek, the advice of an attorney about, what might make sense to them. Sometimes it makes sense to bring a claim. Sometimes it makes sense to file a complaint with an agency like the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Every case is different. What happens to, in New York City, in part as a result of the sustained nature of the protests and the crackdown over the summer, I would say a very large coalition of lawyers, both private attorneys like myself and lawyers working with organizations like the Legal Aid Society and Bronx Defenders and, New York Civil Liberties Union and others, have been working together, I would say, a fair amount, it's fair to say, in trying to field, as many complaints as have come across our desks. So I guess that's all by way of saying that in New York right now, there's a pretty substantial group of people who, are available to talk to people who have experiences ranging from, what you described, to being injured, in sometimes in very serious ways.
Right. So you're saying I may be entitled to some money.
No. No. I don't want to see one of those videos where I have to. I've seen that. It's good, but
it is. Yes. No. So that fascinates me because really, you guys are such an important lever in. We constantly hear about police reform, and especially in the past decade, and the way Black Lives Matter has come to the fore, and all of these videos have come to the fore. And that the constant question of like, why is the system so intractable? Why can't substantive reform be put in place? And you guys are doing such important work around that by bringing these cases to litigation. but why? How would you answer that in a broad sense? Like, is it police unions? Like, what is it that makes you know? Yours is obviously tied to the George Floyd case. What makes such an obvious, essentially lynching on the streets of New York? Even the most tepid of reforms seems to take forever. And maybe I'm putting on my activist hat too much. But what is the what is the wall, if you will, that prevents reform, from police being accountable to the public?
Yeah, I mean, it's all in the game is the problem. Everything that lawyers, I mean, thank you for saying it's an important lever that, lawyers who do 1983 civil rights work, push, it is on one level, but it's so much less important than direct action in the streets, than, real political pressure, than transparency, public transparency. And
that's interesting to hear a lawyer say that in fact the direct action, because so many people poo-poo like the idea of direct action and being in the streets, but you're saying in fact that's a very important component.
It gets the goods, as they say, and it's true because I mean the city but cities like New York City write off as a cost of business the biggest dollar amounts we can get through police misconduct litigation, right? And that's just the reality of it. What we can get in these cases is sometimes some transparency because we get documents in discovery that the cities don't otherwise make public, which usually they should, but they just don't. But what we usually stand to get is money damages, and the idea is that if cities have to keep footing the bill for police misconduct settlements or judgments, then they're going to be forced to reform. I love you.
Hi, Molly.
They're going to be forced to reform the way that they do business, right? They're going to have to change their training, their supervision. That's the idea, right? But that's not how it works here in New York City. The city and the comptroller's office, I'd say because it's an election year, they keep cutting these police misconduct checks. And when lawyers win trials, when plaintiffs win, police misconduct trials and get bigger damages awards that are meant to send a message to change, policy, often the message just doesn't land. Or sometimes, the courts will cut those damages awards saying, it's too much. And so that part of the system doesn't function the way that people pretend that it does, or that ideally it's supposed to, which is why I say, people taking to the streets and challenging state power in the streets is much more effective, always much more effective, I think, than anything we do in the court. So that's part of why I love being in the service of, trying to do work in the service of people on the streets, and who do direct action, and trying to warm it up, for people through whatever little pieces we can do in courtrooms. I mean, sometimes, you have a case that, some of these protest cases, and you can't win, but you still go to trial,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a good segue to actually how we met. You in fact were part of the legal team that represented myself and 7 other people who had allegedly gone onto a piece of property down in Duarte Square. And yes, so you were on that legal team. And honestly, that was a real awakening for me. I so much of that was like a dream to me. Like I did in fact go over the fence, I can say now, because I saw, Bishop George Packard and others, and I was inspired. I had no plan to do it, but the spirit overtook me and I followed the example, and it was just the right thing to do to claim this space that was owned by the church, this church / real estate company, the largest in Lower Manhattan. But anyway, so then I found myself going to trial and meeting you and the other lawyers. and honestly, looking at law in a whole new light, because here was this ragtag group of attorneys who are taking on the system, taking on power, and really just badass people that are I guess, for lack of a better word, taking an activist approach to the law, or really representing the underdog, the people. So yeah, if you would just talk a little bit about your involvement in that case, and what that meant for you.
Sure. Well, as you know, there's some layers there. Yeah, this was an Occupy Wall Street case where after the city had evicted protesters from Occupy's home at Zuccotti Park, there was an action at Duarte Square, some property owned by Trinity Church, in which some people, including my client at the time, who was a Episcopal bishop, who's a bishop, went over this fence and along with Ted were convicted of trespass after a very public trial, at which we got the rector of Trinity Church on the stand so that he had to explain to Bishop Packard's face why the church wouldn't offer the protesters sanctuary, which I think Bishop Packard was framing as the Christ-like thing to do, So, I mean, although the likelihood of acquittal in that case, was probably not very high. It was a bench trial in front of a judge. And I remember, there was a lot of video, including of Bishop Packard in a long flowing purple vestment.
Unmistakable. Yeah.
Dramatically going over the fence, and he was wearing a striking purple vestment during the trial, so.
Yep. That's what that image inspired me to go over. So I can attest to it.
So, right. I mean, there were certainly, I think, some of the client's political goals that were accomplished by going to trial, even though ultimately people were convicted. For me, I'm just trying to follow in the tradition of mentors of mine from mostly my parents and also from the National Lawyers Guild New York City chapter, who I have had the privilege over the years of being mentored by a lot of Attica lawyers. A lot of lawyers who, did a lot of movement defense work. So that's how I was trained, and that's what I try to do. Marty Stolar was one of them, who was on the trial team.
That's right. And if I'm not mistaken, the person who wrote your law school recommendation letter is a bit of an icon as well. Am I wrong?
I did get a law school letter of recommendation from Angela Davis, who I was lucky enough to take a couple of classes with in college, and then glommed onto over the years after college and asked for a letter of recommendation. And she wrote me a really incredibly thoughtful and wonderful letter of recommendation. So, and actually, really, I didn't want to go to law school because I have parents who are lawyers, and so that's not what I thought I was going to end up doing.
Yeah.
And conversations with her helped steer me, in this direction. So
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I should also say at that trial, some friends of yours were attending. Unless you want to tell this part of the story.
No, that's I was hoping you would. Yeah, some friends came to support me, and please go on.
John and Molly Neffel, and they have a podcast called The Radio Dispatch that Ted had been on, and I did not know them at the time, but Molly and I are now married. This is how we met. We have 2 kids. I don't know if that's the most effective storytelling.
That's right.
Jump ahead.
Yeah.
We met during this trial, brought together by Ted's arrest and decision to stand trial.
That's right. I tell people that I have a very niche matchmaking company that it's 1 for 1 so far. 100% success rate, but we don't take on very many people.
Well, we thank you, and we are we are incredibly grateful. And so at basically the trial was almost over, and the prosecutor subpoenaed John,
Right.
issued a subpoena to John to try and get him to testify against you, Ted. Right? You remember?
I do. It was the most exciting part of the trial for me. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it was a fun little side story.
Yeah, and John still has that subpoena. It's framed, it's framed somewhere in his apartment. And I mean, I
Should have been
think
on the wedding invitations.
it was actually on the wedding. So at our wedding,
Yeah.
the wedding color was Bishop Packard purple, and and Bishop Packard was there, which
Oh,
is really
fantastic! Wow, I didn't realize that.
yeah, and right, we had a picture of him going over the fence and a picture of the subpoena in the wedding handout. So it really was a life-changing trial for me, Ted. And
my goodness.
thank you. Yeah, and then the judge, I mean, they wanted John to testify against you because you had
Incriminated myself.
incriminated yourself and perhaps everyone else by talking on this podcast about
We don't have to go too deep into it.
alleged criminal activity. Well, the lesson here is yes, bring people together, but not through talking publicly about your open criminal case without first consulting with your defense attorney.
Again, it just demonstrates how clueless I am to the workings of these things. I'm like, yeah, I'll go on a podcast. What do you want to know? I have no secrets from God, country, or the state of New York.
What was your state of mind?
I'm a comedian. I'm in the arts, man. It's like, yeah, let's hash this out. Maybe I'll get a bit out of it,
Well, I'm very grateful. The judge was just like, no, it's way too late. If you wanted to try and do this, you should have, done it much earlier, basically.
So do you think had they introduced that earlier, might it have been effective, or just in general, it wasn't?
I mean, I think my suspicion is that there was not much chance of winning that trial. And that they did not need that additional evidence. The judge knew, and the prosecutor knew, they did not need that additional evidence. They had a lot of video evidence.
Right.
Oh, and I don't know if you remember, but one of the people who was arrested with you, one of the Granny Peace Brigade people, came in. I can't remember. I don't remember how old she was at the time, but you see on this video all these police arresting everybody, cuffing them one by one. She's just like wandering around. Nobody wants to cuff her. And then finally, she's like the last person, and the chief of department at the time, Joe Esposito, comes up to her, and you could see that he said something like, "All right, Granny, you want to get out of here? You can get out of here," or something like that. And she just turns around and puts her arms back so that
slap him.
And she just loved that footage and wanted a copy of it because she said she wants to make sure that it's played. If she ever passes away, that's the footage she wants to be. That's her. So it's an amazing action. Thank you for participating in it.
Oh man, it was my pleasure. It was life-changing in a lot of ways. And isn't it interesting that life that action is video of that is being played at everything from weddings to this granny wants it at her funeral. It's
right. True.
It's got something for everyone.
Very true.
Well, Gideon, you really are somebody that I have such an affinity for and such affection for. And you do such great work for the people, and you, as you said, you come from such a great tradition. And a great family who we got to see a little sneak peek of. I thought she was coming for the guitar, but it was something else apparently. But thank you for all that you do, my friend, and it's always great to connect with you.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. It's great to see you, and I hope to talk again soon.
Thank you again to Gideon Oliver, a brilliant man, a man who does important work, does it humbly, with a sense of mischief, and he's about all the right things. As I said, I have tremendous respect for him. Thank you for joining us, Gideon Oliver. Okay, friends, it is time now for the award-winning segment. Don't look up the award. Just play along, for the love of God. You've got questions. I've got answers. We've got a couple of questions that have flowed in. The first one comes to us from Instagram. KDD asks, what is your spirit animal and why is it a gazelle? Thank you for your question, KDD, your question and your answer. I'm flattered that you would say gazelle. I do think, have I had this question before? I think, a gazelle's movements, and I think you're alluding to my ease around a stage or even a desk. I do have a fluidity, if you will, to my movements, use of my limbs, that you can't teach, nor would you want to. So a gazelle, the speed, the grace. Thank you. I wouldn't say that, but I'm going to take the compliment in the spirit in which it was offered. What is my spirit animal? I think I've said in the past, any type of bird. Flight appeals to me. I just like the vantage point that affords, and the freedom of just soaring. Like so many eagles in this great country. A bird I think would be my spirit animal, just because I yearn. I would take flight routinely if I had the gift of flight, and just soar. And I like also just I'm a bit of a peeping Tom, truth be told. I like to look in on other people's business. I'm not saying I would look in to their domiciles. I'm saying I just like to get into stuff that's not my business. So I would be that kind of bird. I'd be a nosy bird. That almost sounds like an English expression. You nosy bird. Have I coined an English expression? We must have some UK listeners. Is nosy bird an expression? And if not, why not? I am outing myself as a bit of a nosy bird. I get into business that is not my own. I crave it, in fact. And if I were a bird, I would, for certain, fly around, hover even, and see, what's going on there. No business of mine. And there are more important things to be doing. But as a nosy bird, that's what I consume myself with. So, yes. Again, thank you for your question. What is your spirit animal? Next question is from El Pinche Turtle. Am I saying that right? Who simply says award-winning! Exclamation point. You're referring, of course, to my claims that this segment, You've Got Questions, I've Got Answers, is award-winning. Look, I can be a bit grandiose. I can take liberties with my descriptions of things. In the past, I've claimed that things have gone viral. It's just fun, to me, if it's something gets more than let's say 50 retweets, it's viral. That said, I've had some legit viral moments in my life. I'm not, I'm just stating a fact. And once you've been there, man, you chase that high. You chase that forever. Award-winning? No. This segment, when I say that, I feel as though it should be. I know that the Academy is not going to recognize this segment as it, properly as it should be, but that's a cross that I'm happy to bear. Michael Stahl asks, what should a show booker consider in the prospective roster of comedians while building a bill? You know, Michael, thank you for your question. It's a good one. What should a booker consider? I'm assuming that you mean a comedy show. I am a retired comedian, so that would be an area of expertise for me. What should a comedy show booker consider? Well, that they're funny, that they're comedians who are funny. I like to think that you should have comedians who are good. I also think professionalism matters. You don't want assholes on the bill. You don't want people that are not going to show up, that are going to be misbehaving in some way, show up drunk, high or otherwise, the way they interact with the staff or the crowd or other comedians is abusive. You're not getting booked on this guy's show, I can assure you. So, yeah, a degree of professionalism goes a long way. Funny. That's really it. Well, also, like, I used to book my own show, the Ted Alexandro and Friends show at QED, and I was aware of, like, because I think as a white guy, you have a blind spot where I have a lot of white male friends, a lot of white male comedians. So you can fall into that almost unconscious or subconscious, but unconscious is probably the better word, pattern of just booking people who look like you, for lack of a better word. But then you have to almost like catch yourself and say, like, why am I doing that? Well, I should have women. I should have people who don't look like me. So that's something for, I think, bookers to consider, because you want different perspectives, or even socioeconomic, like some shows, and this is kind of extrapolating out to the business, but in writers' rooms and stuff, writers tend to be of a certain socioeconomic class. So that's, obviously people can hire whoever they want, but I think it's good to have a diversity of perspectives across the board. So the answer is, what should a show look like? Whatever the booker wants it to look like. But in this day and age, I think we're being reminded more and more that a diversity of perspectives has value. So that's what I consider, certainly when booking. And I think there's plenty of great comedians, to consider if you're booking a show. So also young and old, because sometimes both get forgotten. I would say old even more than young, because like the hot young comedian has a better likelihood of getting booked than even somebody who's been in the business 30 years who, the business can tend to forget about 30, 40 years, people that are older that are still great and have so much to contribute. That's the other thing. And I'm not talking about myself if you think I am. I'm talking about even those ahead of me. So all of those things are things that I think are worthwhile considering when booking a show. But first and foremost, if you're considering booking a show, don't. That would be my advice above all. New York Mets fan asks, how do you feel about Wiki listing you as a famous person under its Belrose Queens entry? Thank you for your question, New York Mets fan. And I count myself among them as well. For better or for worse. How do I feel about being listed as a famous person for Belrose? I'm tickled. Belrose is where I'm from. I'm Belrose stock through and through. 11426. I'll show you my ink. I've got none. But I've got plenty of love for Belrose 11426. Belrose, Queens, born and raised. So yes, if I have to be listed anywhere, I'm happy that it's there. I think at one point I was listed as an historian, which I am not. Let the record be straight. Wiki and elsewhere. I am from Belrose, Queens. Lived there until my mid-20s. Late 20s. Moved to Astoria, and the rest is history. Of course, I became associated with Astoria because a lot of my comedy career spanned my time in Astoria, Queens. But Belrose, Queens is where it all started. Belrose and later Queens Village. So, yes, I'm proud to be from Belrose, Queens, and happy that someone entered me as a Belrosian. I will take it and wear that mantle proudly. All right, friends, that's it for this segment. It's a brief one, but I think an important one. And that is our show. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again to our guest, Gideon Oliver. Thank all of you. Again, please take a moment to subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Like this video. Drop us a comment. Let it waft down just below into the comment section. And please do support the show if you are able at patreon.com/Ted Alexandro. As I said, lots of great bonus content there. Extra episodes, extra videos, and of course the critically acclaimed Ted Alexandro Comedy Academy. We're up to 11 classes that will be ongoing. So if you are a comedian or know of one, or are simply comedy curious, get the word out. Tell people. Lots of great wisdom from my 27 plus years as a comedian in New York and around the world, just being dispensed. 11 episodes and counting. Patreon.com/Ted Alexandro. And as always, friends, we thank our executive producer extraordinaire. She rules with an iron fist, but a heart of gold. Third eye, squeegeed, clean as can be. Thank you, Madeline Geraldine. I love you very, very much. And we thank our maestro, the man who creates the bed of music upon which we lay. All of the gems that hit your ears throughout the show are composed by Pro DLC. Check out his music wherever music streams. And we thank our producer emeritus, a man of letters, a man of wisdom. Thank you always, Matthew L. Weiss.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you, friends. Be well. Do what you must. Read the New York Times to find out what was on the Ted Alexandro Show 2 months ago. Until next time, we will see you then.